Now we'll make sure I take the mics off before we go anyway. Well, thank you, David. I've followed David's lead. I've sort of fitted mine in to fit his, so hopefully there's not too much duplication. I mean, a lot of the issues that David raised, I think we share. But what I'm going to try and do is give a kind of university perspective on our planning education and what we do here. What do I go forward? Oh yes, thank you. So yes, CURS, the Centre for Urban Regional Studies, set up in 1966, initially as a research institute covering issues of housing, regeneration, economic development, tourism, leisure and tourism in those days. So that CURS was set up then. Then moved into sort of postgraduate teaching in the 1970s, into undergraduate teaching in the 1980s, and then postgraduate research, of course, as well. So, increasing our portfolio in terms of our teaching. We've kind of moved into geography a few years ago. I mean, CURS was in the School of Public Policy, which was split up. So CURS went to the business school. Then CURS was split into three bits. The planning and regeneration people came to geography. The economic development people stayed in the business school, and the housing people went to social policy. So that was the sort of the split. We came in at that point. We'd just not long got our approved MSc in RTPI accredited MSc in Urban and Regional Planning, and we kind of see CURS now as the sort of the planning school within geography, and it's quite a synergistic kind of relationship, I think, between planning and urban geography, and I think it's been a sort of good home. I'll come back onto that in a minute. We do undergrad joint honours programs, non-RTPI accredited, geography and planning, which is our biggest and longest running. We've also had planning and economics, planning and social policy, and planning and business management. We're now consolidating around the geography planning program, and this is the last year of intake on the others. So we've got 4 programs for the next 3 years, but from the next intake we have solely geography planning students coming to join us. And we've got the MSc Urban Regional Planning is our sort of master's course, which is RTPI accredited, and we have quite a large number of planning PhD students as well, and quite close links, strong links through to research as well, in terms of what we're doing in terms of the CURS Human Geography Research portfolio. Just a bit of history. I mean, it was Cullingworth set up CURS, J.B. Cullingworth, the Cullingworth and Naden book, of course, which students will all remember. And of course, Gordon Cherry, who was the deputy director of CURS under Cullingworth, Barry Cullingworth, who then became head of geography. And apparently he did say some years ago to one of our former colleagues, John Mawson, he said to John, he said, for goodness sake, get an RTPI accredited planning program sorted. So we're glad to say that we followed through a little bit later than perhaps Gordon Cherry wanted, but that was a very important. So there's a sort of long, rich sort of history and connection through Gordon Cherry. The other bit of history which is of interest is that we had the first planning lecturer here in 1911. Raymond Unwin came and did a 3-year lecturership stint funded by Cadbury's. So I know Liverpool say it's the longest running. So there's our little bit of history to peg in there to so there's just a bit of background there. The current CURS, just give you a feel of the current cohort. We have a number of different students. We have students coming straight through from our joint honours onto the programme, so that's quite good, because the first day of induction, when you greet the postgraduates, you see some familiar faces. So that's always a nice thing. So you do recognise that. And they come through almost like a 3+1. So they do the undergraduate, they do the masters, and they stick through with the planning students as well as single honours geography students coming through that route. We also get other students who come back to Birmingham who've done their first degrees elsewhere. They come back to Birmingham because it's cheaper. They can live with mum and dad, and they can do their postgraduate degree there. So that's another strong component. We also have students from the EU, this year from France and Poland, on the postgrad program, and we have a sort of growing market in part-time students, which when we first got accreditation, our part-time numbers were quite small. But now we've got an increasing numbers, and really sort of fueled by sort of activities like the grad scheme at Birmingham City Council, which has enabled students to come through that route. So we're seeing an increasing number of part-timers coming through there. So that's sort of another kind of key component. Mostly actually the ones who are funded, interesting, from the public sector at the moment. So that's a good sign in a sense, but some coming through from the private sector. And these are sort of, they pay the fees and give them the time to do the course on a part-time basis. Well, yeah, not all pay the fees. Yeah, no, there's some pay the fees. Some other local authorities are paying the fees, yeah. No pressure. No, and so that's another distinct. And then, of course, the international, and that's just a breakdown of where we've had sort of students this year on the course. China, Taiwan, by far the large. Chinese students, the biggest component. We've got 2 very good students from Brazil, very sort of dynamic, Indonesia and Russia. So that's our current. We had students from Nigeria and also the Gambia in previous years, but not this year. That's the current. So very sort of kind of distinct makeup of the postgrad student cohort there. Just reflections on where we are in terms of the teaching of that program. We're located in School of Geography, very much like other planning schools. Sheffield and Cardiff. I'm external examiner at Cardiff, and I was down there recently. Many of the sort of same kind of issues there in terms of their international students. So very common that more planning schools are finding homes in geography departments. There was a debate at the Partnerships and Accreditation panel about the importance of autonomy of planning schools and making sure that planning schools are clearly identifiable wherever home they are in. And I think that's something that was a sort of big discussion element, wasn't there, at that, which is very kind of interesting. We had the RTPI accreditation of the Masters we got provisional accreditation in 2007, full accreditation in 2009, and then we reached full partnership status in 2012. And we've been going ever since, and we've seen a sort of kind of rapid expansion of student numbers on that program, and an increasing number of international students as well. But we've also seen this growth too on the undergrad programs, in terms of particularly students from China and Hong Kong coming in onto the undergrad programs through this foundation route. And we have very little control over that. You know, the numbers that come through the programs onto the undergrad planning programs, and we should hopefully see some of those translate into entering onto the master's program. And in terms of trying to sort of internationalise the curriculum, we've sort of tried to make improve our induction programs to reflect the sort of increasing numbers of international students in terms of the length of induction. We do a series of kind of seminars right the way through the first semester in terms of helping the international students to adjust. You know, we do sort of sessions on there, like sessions on British central local government, you know, things that, you know, well, a lot of the English students should go on that actually as well. But you know, just to sort of help them, sort of give them a bit of extra support in terms of trying to get them to settle in. And we've sort of produced a guide for international students to sort of help them sort of get to grips with, you know, what they're sort of experiencing, the different cultures, their, you know, the different ways of learning and so on. So that's something that we try and do, and we're trying to build on and develop that as we go on. We've introduced a new module this year called on international planning. Has 2 field trip components, one to Rotterdam and one to Seoul in South Korea. That's really come about through a sort of partnership and agreement with the University of Seoul, funded by the Seoul Metropolitan Government, which pays for the students' costs except their airfare. That's all their students have to find to go to Seoul. So we've done that this year for the first time, and it's turned out to be very successful. We're there with another English university, Sheffield, but also other American universities. So we were there with Rutgers, Georgia, and Texas, and there's sort of group working. They form group teams from the students from each of the different universities, working together on key issues, and they have to produce what they come up with on the final day of the field trip. So that's been very successful, and also trying to, you know, internationalise the content, the module content of modules to make it more relevant. And the other thing we have is strong links into practice, very much like BCU. We've got very good sort of links, and we've been very well supported by friends out there in the practitioner community, people like Paul and others who, you know, have provided enormous input into the program to give it that kind of practitioner content, which I think is very important. So strong links into practice. This was just some of the issues we were talking about recently at our partnership board. I think resources too, in terms of increasing numbers. You know, we need the resources to keep supporting the delivery of those kind of programs. The other thing, the RTPI, as I say, we want to really sort of understand where the planning school dimension is within the planning schools they accredit. So one of the things I've got to do for the next partnership board is to devise an organogram, is that the right word, about showing where planning fits into the wider structures of both the school, the college and the university. So I'm looking forward to that challenge. I should be asking for Lorena's help maybe on that one. The other thing we've had a debate about with the increasing numbers of international students about language requirements, picking up on what David was saying, that a lot of the students do come and they do struggle. And so the issue does become, do we need to increase the the IELTS scores, for example? So that's a debate that we're sort of having at the moment within the school, and that's being taken up with the college to have a talk about that. The other thing, through the specialist route through the programme, making sure we clearly identify what our options are, and that the dissertations relate to the options, and so the students can develop a kind of specialist route through the programme. And also we've got to do some more work on our learning outcomes matrix. And again, that's the opportunity to reflect on what we teach and to make sure it's appropriate and is relevant to our student body. And also the distinctiveness. I think one of the key distinctiveness of the Birmingham University offer is its its links into the world of practice. And one of our former students has just been named the RTPI Young Planner of the Year, Luke Kofi, so that was a sort of nice fillip. And the internationalisation, of course, key thing for us in terms of trying to develop and take the programme forward. I think we've picked up on many of these things, increasing numbers on both our undergrad, postgrad planning offers, high numbers of international students on the PhDs. Very high numbers of international students there. This is the sort of university-wide figures. You can see it in this sort of university website. We've got 5,000 international students from 150 different countries, so that's quite a wide range. Certainly the RTPI accreditation is a very attractive. The reputation of Birmingham, coming to Birmingham, is important, but the RTPI accreditation gives it that bit of a badge. And also things like Birmingham getting the 2016 Sunday Times University of the Year, very attractive to international students coming in. And of course, although Birmingham gets a lot of bad press, we were 9th in the Rough Guide in 2015. I did look where we were in the 2016. We dropped off the list, but I didn't like to mention that. But so where we've gone now, where are we? 11th, are we?
52nd in the Mercer Index.
Oh, are we? Okay then. All right then. Yeah. Yes, but yeah. But I think a lot of the Birmingham has seen as a sort of dynamic city, and is certainly an attractive element in terms of coming to see us. Again, sort of continuing with our ongoing international recruitment on the courses, hopefully developing our existing links, certainly building on our links with Seoul now, the Technical University of Delft, where we go to Rotterdam on the undergrad programme too. The first year students, including the planning students, are now going to Rotterdam on their first year field trip instead of Snowdonia. So that's another sort of good example of that. But we've also got good links with the Technical University of Delft that do our postgrad field trip. Also, University of Amsterdam, we've had some initial links, and we've got a new member of staff that will be arriving any day now. 2 weeks. Who's joining us from the University of Amsterdam, so that will be a good opportunity to sort of develop and strengthen those kinds of, and we've got links into Japan, and one other member of staff, John Round, is very keen to explore perhaps further links which the planning programme could benefit from. So again, looking for and expanding those links, identifying new links, and certainly being involved in this project, I think, gives us the opportunity to sort of strengthen links with our South African colleagues. And of course, Birmingham has got the new Dubai campus. So I don't know, are we off there soon? Are we? Oh, so we're here. So again, sort of opportunities there maybe to but I don't know where.
discussion around how planning can be embedded in modules around behaviours and health.
Oh,
So
right.
that's where we were. There's no planning programme
Per se, no, okay.
There's some discussion.
Okay, all right then. So there's some potential there. Just something about the benefits. I think David's already touched upon these. These are students doing the integrated planning project where they work in teams and produce plans for an integrated heart for Selly Oak. And they present to a live audience, to a panel which is made up of politicians, planning officers, private sector planners, local community reps. So they make their presentations, and the panel decide on which is the best scheme and which is the best presented. These panels are now on tour as part of the consultation exercise in Selly Oak. So that's sort of, but it's a very mixed kind of group there working on their particular projects. But you get an interesting dynamic student cohort. The international students bring an added value, added dimension to your teaching, bring different perspectives. One of the things we do early on with the international students is get them to talk about planning where I'm from, and they talk about some very sort of interesting issues, about global warming, about deforestation, poverty, some of the issues we've been sort of looking at in South Africa. The English students suddenly talk about house extensions. They live next door to someone whose parents moaned about having a house extension and they had no third-party rights. So it's very interesting to see the different perspectives from the different students. So that sort of comes out very strongly in terms of that. The learning and sharing of ideas, I think the strength comes from, it's not just coming to learn from their esteemed lecturers, of course, but they learn from each other, and so the joint working on groups and so on that facilitates that kind of process. And that's very, very common, very present thing to witness, very heartwarming. And they make a very positive contribution to the university, of course, and to the city, which is, David's already raised that point. Some difficulties, the different cultures of learning. David's already touched upon that. Often they don't feel very comfortable in group work situations. Often the domestic students find it difficult to work, often with some of the international students. So that, communication issues are certainly there. There is certainly often that sort of theory-practice divide that David has sort of touched upon, and also thinking about the relevance of what we're teaching them here in terms of taking it back to where they're from. Again, something that we've been sort of touching upon very much in this morning's discussion. And just some final reflections, I think, and also informed by some of our discussions with the practitioners when we were out in South Africa. What we teach and for where is very important, and one of the discussions we had, can you produce, it's a terrible term, isn't it, oven-ready planners? I'm not sure you can. You get some sort of skills coming out of planning school, but a lot of the learning is post education. It's the learning on the job that's, in a sense, been sort of identified as being very kind of important, and the specifics of where you're working is something you can't necessarily cover on a planning program. The importance of local context and scales, again, where you're working, what scale you're working at, is it local, regional, national? Again, some very important issues. Some of the discussion was revolved around, should we be teaching what the principles of good planning are? Then how you deliver those will depend, on the local context. But, is that possible to sort of identify what those principles might be? And another sort of strong element in the discussion was that perhaps planning schools should focus on the skills dimension much more, rather than teaching them what the National Planning Policy Framework is saying. Should we be teaching them to think strategically? Should we be teaching them to think about how to negotiate? Should we be teaching them to think reflectively about things? So those kinds of skills can kind of go and work in different contexts. And I think, that was, how can we teach them to communicate well, So that was just some of the sort of discussions and sort of some thoughts that, we've already picked up today. And the other thing that came out from those discussions in South Africa was, again, the importance of having practitioner inputs into the program, and also they talked about the importance of placements and things like that. So that's another thing that's. But that was just some ideas emerging out of some of those discussions. So that's it. Thank you. Sorry for the whistle stop. And I hope I didn't duplicate too much from David.
Just prompted a very simple question. How many non-South African teachers are there in Content?
Having non-South